Hello everybody, I'm day weather meteorologist Don Day with your Public Lands Council weekly weather update for this November 22nd, 2025, brought to you by WSR Insurance Services Incorporated and Ag Risk Advisors. As we go into this Thanksgiving week ahead of us, this is what we're watching for you. There's been some really good rain for California and parts of the desert Southwest and Southern Rockies, and they're going to get more here in the short term as the wet weather pattern for those areas will continue, while dry and mild weather in the west has been found elsewhere, especially the central and northern plains, central and northern Rockies. But a colder pattern is finally emerging. Two cold surges, one during the week next week with some Canadian air, but not a lot of snow, some, especially for the northern plains and northern Rockies. Then a bigger swath of colder weather coming the weekend after Thanksgiving. When we take a look at the last 7 days of precipitation, you can see all the red there and the yellow and the blue across Arizona, southern Nevada, and into California, then up into the Pacific Northwest. A really wet pattern and needed precipitation for that part of the country. But elsewhere, you can see that we just don't have a lot here, at least in the central Rockies and northern plains. Precipitation has been a bit below average and really not very plentiful. But if you look at the last 2 weeks and look at the anomaly really shows up there in California, central and western Arizona, and southern Nevada. So good for those areas to get moisture, but there's a lot of brown elsewhere as it's been a pretty quiet November. Look how warm the last 7 days have been. Wow. However, what'll happen, especially in the cold season, is where it's been the warmest is where it can get the coldest later, because Mother Nature always is the great equalizer, and she equals things out in the long game. Playing the long game, usually things even out. Short term, though, it continues to be warm, but that will be changing. There's the next low going across Southern California, and by early next week, it'll be moving out into the plains, but not before bringing more precipitation to California, the desert Southwest, northwest Mexico there, then moving into New Mexico and into Colorado in the southern plains, with the Pacific Northwest through the weekend getting a little wet, but dry conditions in between these storm tracks. Snowfall looks like this through the weekend in the high country. Then when we go into next week, the first frontal system comes through the northern Rockies, the Pacific Northwest, and into the northern plains late Monday night into Tuesday. This will usher in colder Canadian air behind it instead of Pacific air, and this will produce some moisture. Then we'll see cold air go across the Great Lakes up into the northeastern United States, causing some lake effect snows. Temperatures on Thanksgiving Day look like this across the nation. Coldest in the nation's midsection and along the east slopes of the Rockies. But you can see west of the divide there, some red-orange colors. We're still west of the divide. Temperatures will be above average. Through Thanksgiving Day and into the following Friday, you can see there will be snow in the northern plains, North Dakota, Minnesota into Wisconsin there, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and across some of the Rockies. The bigger plunge, though, comes later in the week. This is the day after Thanksgiving, but look what happens Thanksgiving weekend. We see a deep trough of low pressure digging in, high pressure building in the Gulf of Alaska, which opens the door to Canadian air funneling into the U.S., especially the western United States by next Sunday. The cold air really gets in and gets deeper. Look at these temperature anomalies by next weekend. So livestock interest, despite the mild weather we've had here in the month of November, the weekend after Thanksgiving, and this is going to continue likely into the first week of December, a much, much colder regime temperature-wise, and snow potential by next weekend, through next weekend, as you see here, really goes up across the northern half of the U.S., and into parts of the Rockies and northern Great Basin states and parts of the Pacific Northwest as well. So be ready for the changes. They're on the way. Have yourself a great week ahead.